Welcome to episode 2 of Econ and Finance for the People. Today we're going to talk about another basic economic concept, opportunity cost, and then we're going to touch on something that has been on my mind in light of recent events. What is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost, the textbook definition, refers to the next best alternative that we give up when we choose an option. Now, the first thing to understand is not everyone has the same amount of options. So we all have our means, which can be limited, and then we have our unlimited wants. We have everything that we want, and we have either $100 or $1,000 in the bank. We have 24 hours in a day. We have a limited way to get the things that we want, and our wants are endless. So when we go to the supermarket, or when we make a decision, we purchase something, or we decide how we're going to spend our time, when we do those things, we are giving up other things. So we're saying, I'm going to put this amount of money towards my daily barista coffee, and when that money goes towards the coffee, then it's not going towards something else that I also want, but I don't want it as much as I want my barista coffee. Has anyone ever blown you off or not made time to hang out, and it made you wonder how much of a friend they were or how much they really liked you, and then you said to yourself, well, that's okay, they're just busy? Or have you ever told someone, yeah, I really want to hang out, I want to catch up, but just not right now, I've got a lot on, I just don't have time. And it seemed like a legitimate excuse or reason. But when you really think about it, when we say these things, or when people say these things to us, what we're really saying is something else is more important. And that's the gist of what opportunity cost means. It's the cost we pay when we give up the next best alternative. Let's take an example. Let's use the name Hamish for our fictional character, and thank you to all the Hamishes out there for letting me use your name. So Hamish is going to university, he's a senior, and he's got a great personality, he's good looking, so he's quite popular. Now there's Jemima and Sarah, who are both quite keen to hang out with him and study at Denny's. So both Jemima and Sarah make it apparent to Hamish. Now, they both want to spend Friday night studying at Denny's, and hopefully getting to know Hamish better. Hamish knows there's no way that both Jemima and Sarah are going to want to do study group with him. They want one-on-one time. So then he has to weigh up his options. He really wants to get to know Sarah, and he really wants to get to know Jemima. But unfortunately, he's only got one Friday night this week. They both want to hang out with him on Friday night, so he has to pick one. He thinks about it for a little bit, and he goes, you know what? Sarah's really nice, but Jemima, oh, she's got personality. Nothing against Sarah. She's the next best option. I want to go study at Denny's with Jemima. So he says to Sarah, I'm sorry, Sarah, I've got something on. So Sarah became Hamish's opportunity cost when he decided that he wanted to hang out with Jemima instead. That basically explains what opportunity cost means. It's the next best alternative that we give up for the choices we make. And we do this all the time throughout the day, whether it's us choosing who we spend our time with, whether it's us choosing what we buy at the supermarket. Some people choose not to buy a house. They choose to have smaller investment properties. And they really wish they could have both, but they can't. Some people, they really want to have some luxury goods, but they can't have endless luxury goods. So they might say, well, I really want to buy these high thread count pillowcases, but if I buy them, then I can't have those expensive shoes. So I wish I could have both, but I can't, and I'm going to go with the high thread count pillowcases. So this is what opportunity cost means. Now, the second thing that I wanted to talk about was economic care packages. And I know that there are probably opinions as many as there are people out there about this topic. I'm also interested in hearing what other people think. So if you have any thoughts on this, please leave a comment or message me directly. I'm always up for a good conversation about this. So my thought is, people get excited about what sounds like free money. It sounds great. I mean, just hold out your hand. In tough times, we're all in a very unique situation right now, and a lot of people are feeling anxiety, and we're being told to do certain things. Some people's livelihoods are under threat. So if there's free money, it's a good thing, right? This is what we need. And this is being responsible, giving everyone money, and then we'll all make it through, right? Well, actually, so the first thing, well, let's back up a little bit and let's try and understand what it means when the government gives us money. So firstly, we need to know where the government gets its money from. Most of it, we think, comes from taxes. but the government does have a lot of different things going on and is always tasked with the responsibility of sorting out some very big problems. There's just no simple way to cover off everything that people expect the government to do these days without a little bit of borrowing. So that leads us to the topics of national debt. What is national debt? I think people get confused when we start talking about national debt because there are two things you need to separate first. There's the national deficit and there's national debt. So the national deficit is the amount of money that we don't have as a country in a year that we need to keep running or that we planned to have under our budget. The national debt is actually what we as a nation owe, the money that our government has borrowed. So let's take a look at how much we owe, how much we have owed, where we get the money from, and what this actually means. So the national debt on average since 1972 until last year, it has averaged around $25 billion. Currently, we're sitting at $52 billion, and on the current trajectory by 2023, we're looking at being around $77 billion in debt. So some people might say, well, if we got to spend, we got to borrow. If we don't have enough, let's just borrow. I mean, look at some other countries, look at the US, they seem all right, so let's just borrow. What are some of the dangers of us borrowing too much money? Well, what could happen if we borrow too much money, we may end up with very high taxes because the government is going to be spending all of its money paying the interest on the money that we owe instead of putting that money into the goods and services that they've been tasked with providing the public. Things like roading and transportation projects, all of our infrastructure, things like that. So if the government is so busy paying interest or paying off its debt, then how are they going to put that money into things that we actually need as a country? And if they go, well, let's just borrow more money, then you end up putting more and more of taxpayers' dollars into paying off the debt instead of paying for what we need. And either we're going to be getting less as a nation, or the government is going to have to say, okay, well, just to keep up with what we have been doing, now taxes have to go up. And then over the years, our taxes will go up and up and up and up, and we'll end up getting less and less for it. So national debt is something that we might need in the short term for certain projects and initiatives, but in the long term, it really isn't something that we want to blow out of proportion. Now let's look at how the government gets its money. So when the government needs money for a financial care package, if it's something that hasn't been planned for example, COVID, then they may need to borrow. They can either rejig their budget, or they can borrow, or they can do a bit of both, or they could increase taxes to pay for it. So let's talk about how the government gets its money when it borrows. Either it can borrow from the Reserve Bank, or it can sell bonds, which is actually another way that it commonly does borrow from the Reserve Bank. So what is a bond? A bond is kind of like a promise. Let's say that I need $10 from you. So I say, can I borrow $10 and I'll pay you back in a few months, and when I pay you back, I'll give you an extra 5%. That's very similar to what a bond is. A bond is a promise to pay you back the money that you put in and a certain percentage, which is called the coupon rate. And the time frame, so in my example, I gave the example of 3 months. That time frame is the maturity. When the bond matures, then you get back the money that you put in, and you get back a certain interest on top of it. So it all sounds very good. And the thing that makes a bond different to, say, a term deposit is that you can buy and sell bonds. So first, the government can issue bonds, and you can buy them from the government, or the Reserve Bank can buy them. And then the bonds can they can be sold around, so they can be sold to other people depending on how much people want those bonds. So if you haven't been able to find a buyer, then obviously you're stuck with it. But that's how things work in the market anyhow. You have to find someone who's interested in that item that you're offering, and then you have to agree on a price. So bonds sound like a really good idea. What is a danger in buying bonds? If, let's say, you wanted to invest in bonds. One of the dangers is referred to as the interest rate risk. So let's say that you buy a bond and you're going to get 10% interest when the bond matures. But what if in the market some other financial products turn out to start offering 15% interest and you can't find anyone to sell your bonds to? So now you're stuck with this bond that you bought and you have to wait 5 years for your 10% interest, when if you had put that money into something else, you may be able to get higher interest. So you've lost the opportunity to make higher interest by locking your money away in this bond. Another problem with investing in bonds is the inflation risk. Inflation risk is basically that if the rate of inflation increases to the point that your interest that you're getting off the bond is not that valuable, then you've really lost out by buying that bond in the first place. So we've kind of gone a bit off on a tangent, but that's just a little bit of background around what bonds are, because when the government needs to raise funds, it may issue bonds, so we need to know what those are. And it could also look at selling assets or increasing taxes. Those are some of the ways that the government gathers additional funds for initiatives like financial care packages. So first we need to know where the money is coming from. Now, let's say the government has gotten this money and they want to release a financial care package. Okay, it still sounds like a good idea. Hey, I'm up for free money. But let's take a moment to think about what money is. So money is actually an exchange mechanism. Everyone comes to the market and we are trading goods or services. And we're doing this to get the things that we want. We give what we can offer, and then we use money so that we can go and get something else that we couldn't get for ourselves. A very simple example of this is, let's say that I have a bunch of chooks in my backyard, and these chooks produce eggs. So I've got plenty of eggs, but I don't have any milk. Now down the road, Farmer Brown has a whole bunch of cows and they're producing lots of milk. I want some milk for my breakfast. I've got plenty of eggs. So I go to Farmer Brown and I trade some eggs with him for a big can of milk. Now I've got milk and eggs. That's the gist of the market. So if we dump more money into circulation, but we've not increased the goods and services that are being provided, it seems like magic. It seems like this money is just coming out of nowhere. And in the short term, maybe it can be helpful in some cases. But in the long run, when we just go and dump money out of nowhere into the market without increasing the goods and services that are being provided, what we're actually doing is watering down the mechanism that we use to trade for goods and services. So we're making it worth less. We're not increasing any goods or services. We're just dumping more of the trade mechanism. So we're adding a bunch of zeros to the amount of money that's in the market, but we're not growing the goods and services produced. So that means that all the people who have saved, people who have money in the bank, people who are on a fixed salary, well, the value that you have had has now been diminished. And it's ever so slight each time a financial care package is introduced, but in essence, we are all becoming poorer. This is also sometimes referred to as redistribution. It's kind of a necessary evil that we use in many cases. For example, with benefits, they can be used to help support social stability. And the social stability that we receive is something that other investors rely on in order to carry out their business. So they're still in some ways benefiting from that redistribution. But it is a very fine balance. And when you keep dumping care packages into the economy, it will work out that we will all be poor in the long run. And as we know with the economy, one thing leads to another and creates a domino effect. So if you say, well, that's okay because I got a bit of a payout, so I'm all good. Definitely if there is a payout and you're entitled to it, you should get it, because otherwise you'll be one of the people that are losing out and that are ending up with less value in the bank, in their savings or the cash in their pocket or the fixed wages that they're on. But even though, yes, you can put your hand out to help reduce the negative effects, I wouldn't be so quick to celebrate helicopter money or celebrate these funds that are just being divvied out to everyone like it's Christmas. Because in some ways, it's a little bit of an illusion, and eventually it will be time to pay the fiddler. I hope that makes sense. We've kind of gone around and touched on quite a few different things. I tried to keep it organized, but some things are a little bit of a rabbit hole, but hopefully that gives enough background to cover off these two topics, at least a very basic and simple introduction to them. And again, these are just one way to look at these ideas. There are lots of other different opinions and perspectives out there, so hopefully that just, this talk raises a little bit of interest and gets you thinking. And if you have any questions, if you want to talk about it, just let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.